An airplane A is 350 miles from P en route to Q on a bearing of 56 degrees. Presently, the airplane is 280 miles due south of R. R is due east of P and also due west of Q. And so our goal is to calculate the distance PR. Now PR is here, this is PR, and PR is one of the side lengths of this right angle triangle. And labeling this triangle, we have that this side, which is 350 in measure, this side 350 miles, this side PA is side, we're gonna call it C, all right? That's the hypotenuse because it's opposite this right angle. And we're gonna call this side A, and we're gonna call the missing side, we're gonna call that side B, okay? Now we're gonna use Pythagoras theorem to help us to determine the size or the measure of B. Now C is 350, and so and A is 280. And so those are what we know, right? So we have to substitute that into this equation and solve for B. But before we do that, let's make B squared the subject of this formula. So we're gonna send A squared over the equal sign. When we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a negative A squared. So we have C squared minus A squared is equal to B squared. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna switch it. So we have that B squared is equal to C squared minus A squared. And so now we can substitute. Note that C is 350, okay? And A is 280. So we have 350 squared minus 280 squared, where 350 squared is 350 times 350, which is, that is 122,500, and 280 squared is 78,400. Next, we subtract these two and we get, when we subtract them, we get 44,100. We're not done yet because we have to take the square root of both sides. And so we have the square root of B squared is equal to the square root of 44,100. We cancel this with that, so we left with B is equal to the square root of 44,100. And so we have that B is equal to 210 because the square root of 44,100 is 210. So that means that the distance PR is 210 miles. Next, we have to determine the angle PQ. Now, I'm sorry, we have to determine the angle P. Okay, now what is P, right? P is this angle right there, right? We have to determine what this is. And so we're gonna call this theta. The side that is opposite theta is called the opposite side. And we have here, this is the right angle, and the side that's opposite the right angle, we call that the hypotenuse. And then the side that is left, we call that the adjacent side, all right? And so we're gonna do here is we know that the hypotenuse is 350. We also know that the opposite is 280. And we're trying to figure out what is theta, right? Now we're gonna use this, this acronym to help us. It's SOHCAHTOA, where this one refers to the sine, where this one refers to the sine ratio, this one refers to the cosine ratio, and tan is referred to here, right? So which one of these three are we going to use? Now, we have 350, we have 280, and we just recently figured out that PR is 210, all right? And so we have all three of the side lengths. So that means that we could use any of the three trig ratios. But I'm going to use the trig ratio that involves the hypotenuse and the opposite because those two sides were given. It's just a safer route to use the sides that were given. And so we have the hypotenuse and the opposite. That is going to be sine. So we have to use sine because that involves the hypotenuse and the opposite. And we have to figure out what is the given angle. I'm sorry, we have to figure out what is theta, the missing angle. Now the opposite here is 280. The hypotenuse is 350 and theta is P because that's what we're trying to figure out. And so we have sine P over 1 is equal to 280 over 350. The reason why we put it over 1 is because we are about to cross multiply. And so we say 1 times 280 and 350 times sine P. And so we have that right there. 350 times sine p is going to be equal to 1 times 280. 1 times 280 is 280. Next, we divide both sides by 350. And that means that we can cancel this with that. So we are left with sine p is equal to, we are left with sine p is equal to 280 over 350. That's what we're left with. Sine p is equal to 280 all over 350. That is what we're left with. But we're going to take sine inverse of both sides. And okay, so it's going to be sine inverse of sine p and sine inverse of 280 over 350. And so this is what we have. Sine inverse of sine p is equal to sine inverse of 280 all over 350. And we're doing that because we want to isolate p. We want p to be by itself. Indeed, sine inverse and sine cancels out. And so what we have here is sine inverse and sine, they cancel out each other. So we are left with p is equal to sine inverse of 280 all over 350. That's what p is. P is equal to sine inverse of 280 over 350. And so p is equal to 53.13010235. That's what angle p is. We're going to express this correct to 2 decimal places, and that is 53.13. And so angle P correct to 2 decimal places, angle P correct to 2 decimal places is 53.13 degrees. Next, what we want to do is we want to figure out what is the bearing of A from P. We want to figure out what is the bearing of A from P. Now we have A, but we want to figure out the bearing of A from P. So that means that we have to start at P. And so when we start at P, we're going to draw our north, right? And then we have to go in this direction, all right? And so we go in this direction until we reach A. And so when we reach the line associated with A, we stop. And so this is the angle that we're trying to find, right? This particular measurement right here, this same one. Now, what do we do know? Well, we do know that this first part, right? This first part is 90 degrees because the north is perpendicular to this particular side, right? So they form a 90-degree angle. So the north and this side, they are perpendicular and they form a 90-degree angle. And so that's why this first part is 90. Now, the second part is what we have to figure out. And so we already knew from the previous question that this part which we just figured out is 53.13 degrees, correct to 2 decimal places. And so in order to figure out what is this in its totality, we will have to add 90 degrees plus 53.13. And so what do we have? We have that the bearing is equal to 90 degrees plus 53.13. And so that means that we have 143.13. Again, the bearing is we get the bearing because that's the sum of these two angles, right? And so the bearing of A from P is 143.13 degrees, and that's the answer to this question. Okay, now our goal is to determine the distance AQ. The distance AQ. Now let's notice what AQ is. So AQ is going to be this particular side, and this particular side is one of the 3 sides of our right angle triangle. And so we have that this side is the hypotenuse because it's opposite the right angle. We have that this side, let me label it, I didn't label it, but we have that this side right here is the opposite, and it's the opposite because it is the side that is opposite the given angle, and in this case the given angle is 56 degrees. And so the hypotenuse is the side that's opposite the right angle, and the opposite is the side that is opposite the given angle, and the side that is left is 280, right? So the side that is opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, and the side that is opposite the given angle is the opposite side, and the side that is left is 280, okay? And so again, the opposite is, well, we don't know what the opposite is, but in this case, like we don't know the actual measurement, but in this case, we are trying to figure out the hypotenuse, like what is the hypotenuse? What is that measurement? Now we do know what is the adjacent. The adjacent is 280, but we don't know the hypotenuse, and that's why we call it x, right? And so, we also do know that theta is 56 degrees. Now, in order for us to answer this, we are going to use the cosine trig ratio. And the reason why we use cosine is because we are trying to figure what the opposite is. We don't know what that answer is, but we have the adjacent. So you have to use a trig ratio that has the adjacent and the hypotenuse. And so what we have here is the adjacent is 280. The hypotenuse is x because that's the missing side. We don't know what that is. And theta is 56 degrees because that's the angle right here. So we have cosine of theta, or cosine of 56 all over 1 is equal to 280 all over x. And we're doing this in order so that we can cross multiply. So we have that x multiplied by cosine of 56 and 1 multiplied by 280. And that gives us x times cosine of 56. And this is going to be equal to 1 times 280. And so we have x multiplied by cosine of 56 is going to be equal to 280, but we divide both sides by cosine of 56. And we cancel this with that. So we get that x is equal to 280 all over cosine of 56. So we have x is equal to 280 divided by cosine of 56. When we divide these two, what do we get? When we divide these two, we get that x is equal to 500.721662. Now we want to express our answer correct to two decimal places. And so we look at this one is less than 5. And so we have that x is equal to 500.72. And so that's the distance AQ. So the distance AQ is going to be equal to 500.72 miles. And that's the distance. Correct to two decimal places, 572 miles. That's the answer to this question.